This is how America was stolen, episode 29. When removal reached its limits, the system evolved again. Episode 29 begins with the creation of a new solution, not to coexist, not to repair harm, but to contain. If native nations could not be erased completely, then they would be confined. Thus, the reservation was born. Reservations were described as protection, as safe spaces, as land set aside where native people could live undisturbed. But the land chosen told the truth the words tried to hide. It was remote, it was infertile, it was undesirable to settlers. Reservations were not gifts, they were boundaries. Native nations were assigned to these areas regardless of their traditions, climate knowledge, or spiritual ties. Plains people were sent to forests. Forest people were sent to deserts. Coastal nations were pushed inland. Displacement continued, just with fences. Movement off reservations was restricted. Trade was controlled. Food supplies were rationed. Dependency was engineered. Survival became conditional. And conditions were enforced by agents who answered not to native nations, but to the government. Traditional leadership structures were undermined. Councils were replaced with appointed figures. Decisions required approval. Resistance was punished through starvation, imprisonment, or further displacement. Autonomy was slowly strangled. Episode 29 reveals a devastating shift. Violence no longer needed constant force. Control could be maintained through policy. Children were especially targeted. Education was framed as opportunity. But schools were designed to strip language, belief, and identity. Hair was cut. Names were changed. Punishment followed tradition. The goal was not learning. It was transformation. On reservations, ceremonies were restricted or outlawed. Sacred practices were labeled illegal. Spiritual leaders were monitored. Identity itself became suspicious. To be native was treated as something that needed correction. Settlers justified the system by calling it humane. They claimed native people were being helped. Civilized, protected from extinction. They never asked why protection required confinement. Despite everything, native nations adapted again. They farmed hostile land. They shared resources. They preserved culture quietly. They passed down stories after dark, when rules loosened and memory could breathe. Survival continued. But life on reservations was not stability. It was pressure. Diseases spread in overcrowded conditions. Food shortages were constant. Poverty was engineered and then blamed on those suffering within it. A cycle was created and then condemned. Episode 29 forces us to confront another truth. Reservations were not an end to violence. They were